Good evening. My name is Alihan Alipov, and I am a member of Superintendent's Student Advisory Council. Along with my peers who are with me tonight to conduct this candidate forum, I am currently a senior at Lafayette High School and have attended Fayette County Public Schools off and on since 5th grade. For tonight's forum, we will begin by allowing 3 minutes for each candidate to introduce themselves and explain why you want to be a school board member. I will now ask my fellow superintendent, Student Advisory Council member Abby Hull, to further explain tonight's proceedings.
Thank you, Alihan. Good evening, candidates. Thank you for joining us this evening for this important discussion. My name is Abby Howell, and I am currently a senior at Tates Creek High School and have attended Fayette County Public Schools since kindergarten. After all candidates have introduced themselves, we will continue to learn more about you and your stance on certain issues by asking each of you questions that we have created. Each candidate will be asked the same questions in order to avoid the appearance of favoring one candidate over another. Also, we will go in random order for each question, so no candidate will always be the first or last to answer.
Hello, everyone. I am Naya Rhodes, and I am currently a sophomore at Frederick Douglass High School and have attended Fayette County Public Schools off and on since the 5th grade. Since our time is limited this evening, candidates will be given 2 minutes to respond to each question. Each time a question is asked, you will see a countdown clock on the screen that lets you know how much time you have left. We ask that you be considerate of this and finish your final sentence when your time is up.
We will now begin with introductions. Remember, you have 2 minutes. We will begin with Miss Marilyn Clark.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting us. I'm glad to be here. I want to be on the school board for a number of reasons, and I think I bring a lot of different things to the table. First of all, I bring experience. I bring engagement in the community, and also external collaborations. I have lived in other markets, and I've seen other school districts, and I know that we have an excellent school district. I have 2 kids who successfully went through school here, all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade, and both are doing well in life. I am a disadvantaged student myself in terms of my background and what I experienced as a child, and I don't think that that is what defined me. My parents and teachers cared about me and had high expectations. I've worked in the district for 5.5 years, and I've been gone for 2 years, and I know a lot of things have changed, but I do understand how the district operates. I will be an advocate for students. I will be an advocate for faculty and staff, and I believe that teachers are special, and that's what got me through school, and that's what got my kids through school. As far as community engagement, I have worked for the last 20 years that I've been in this market, or plus 20 years, served on numerous boards and committees where I have given back to the community because I believe that that's important. I serve in my church, in my sorority. I believe that economic gaps create educational gaps, and my life work now is to work on economic gaps. I work in economic development and supplier diversity at the University of Kentucky, and hope to collaborate a lot more with Fayette County Schools in closing those gaps. When I first moved here, I worked with Lindley Elementary School, which doesn't exist anymore, but we did an adopt-a-school program, and that was really, really special. I have external collaborations. I work a lot with Commerce Lexington, with the business community. I believe that we are preparing students for a new world when we talk about the global society. We're talking about AI, and we're talking about electric vehicles, and we're talking about building out an infrastructure that we've never seen before. And so when we talk about preparing those students for that global community, all of us have to be at the table to talk about that, students included. I also believe that we are here to give something back. And so I am looking at this position as a way for me to give back to a community that has given so much to me. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Marilyn Clark. Next, Mr. Edward Dixon.
Hello. It's a privilege to be here tonight. My name is Edward Alexander Dixon. Go by Alex. I am married with two wonderful kids who are currently enrolled in FCPS. My son attends Wellington Elementary. My daughter attends Lafayette High School and Locust Trace Agri-Science Center. And I am here tonight because I believe success in the classroom begins at home. And I know that sounds weird, but home looks different for every student. It looks different for every teacher, every staff member. For me, growing up, home was domestic violence. Home was parents who were divorced. I spent my first 2 years, kindergarten and first grade, in Jefferson County schools. And after my parents divorced, I was homeless as a child, so I know what that's like. Moving ahead into middle school and high school, my mom did her best as a single parent, but I know that love, it's fantastic. But when you struggle with alcoholism, you got a parent who works 2 jobs, it's tough. I even had the option to drop out of school in high school, but I decided not to do that. So I went the non-traditional route of joining the military. My college was paid for through the GI Bill, and that got me to where I am today as a decision support analyst with UK Research. My job there is to help our university researchers and the vice president for research make decisions, business decisions, using tons of data points. And like Ms. Clark, I just want to give back to my community that's given me so much. I'm a soccer coach for I Am Third Sports. I have done that for almost the entire time I lived in Lexington, since 2013. And that brings me a ton of joy as well. So I get to meet kids from all different backgrounds, all different ways of life. And what that's taught me is there's a lot more than what you see on the surface with these kids. There's a lot going on at home, a lot going on at school. And the conversations I have with community members that talk about Fayette County's test scores, I try to remind them that that's just one data point, that there's just so much more that Fayette County Schools has to focus on than just test scores. So again, I'm just here to do my part and make a difference in Fayette County.
Thank you, Mr. Edward Dixon. And finally, Mr. William Swope.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation. My name is William Swope. I grew up just off of Georgetown Street. I attended Douglas Elementary in Leestown. At the time, it was called Leestown Junior High. Today, it's called middle school. I'm a proud alumnus of Bryan Station Senior High. Go Defenders. Let me ask for your forgiveness. Some time ago, I suffered a medical condition that makes it difficult for me to speak at times. In fact, this is the first opportunity that I've had to do any public speaking at all. I have been a public servant all my life. I spent 23 years with the Lexington Fire Department. I spent 8 years as the State Fire Marshal for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, or the top fire official in the state of Kentucky. But perhaps my greatest experience came when I was a paraeducator at the Lexington Day Treatment Center, which is now known as the Audrey Grievous Center. I've often heard the phrase that it takes a village to raise a child. I was raised in that village. In fact, it is known as St. Martin's Village. I used to tell my children how lucky they were. We would walk to school in bitter coldness, knee-deep snow, and uphill both ways. As a school board member, I rely on my experience of statutory policy development, budgetary oversight, and strategic planning. Very quickly, I believe that in inclusion, diversity and inclusion, I was the administrative officer for the Lexington Fire Department for some time. And my experience would show that It was during that time that we made a priority of hiring minorities and women. I believe in establishing meaningful relationships with both community leaders and parents and students. I believe in supporting our educators and providing them with the tools and resources they need in order for students to do an excellent job.
Thank you all so much for those enlightening responses. We will now begin the question and answer portion of the forum. Remember, you have 2 minutes to respond to each question.
Good evening, candidates. My name is Donovan Rodriguez Verdin. I'm currently a senior at Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School and have attended Fayette County Public Schools since kindergarten. I have the honor of asking you tonight's first question. Question number 1. Every child has the right to go to school and school events free from fear. Unfortunately, across our nation, our schools are experiencing increased instances of violence. How would you, as a school board member, work with the superintendent to better ensure the safety of students and staff? Starting with Mr. Edward Dixon.
So the first thing that I would do is to do what I do on a daily basis, and that is look at the data. Look at what incidents are happening within our schools, try to define trends, and then work with our school safety personnel, Fayette County Public Schools police officers, teachers, and determine the best route for preventing things from happening. But I would also look at possible root causes. I know there was a recent incident in Virginia, I believe, where a 6-year-old shot a teacher in an elementary school. And for me, that root cause is, how did the child get the gun? So that would involve working with our community to improve gun safety. As far as specific details, that would really kind of be determined on conversations. But that is also something, and another reason why I'm running for the school board seat is I would love to see our school board do more school engagement. There is the mention of having a school board meeting in Henry Clay to address the issues of the parents and the teachers and the students there. I would love to see more of that. I would love to see more actively going out into the communities and doing what our council members are due.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Next with Ms. Marlon Clark.
Okay, thank you. That's a very good question. I do think that root causes are a big thing to look at, but I also think that students are probably the ones who know what's going on with their classmates. And a lot of times when we look at school violence, there's a student who either has been bullied or he has gone through some things with his family. And when those things are reported, I think that is a positive thing. So listening to students, also the counselors that are in the school now, I know that we increased counselors. We have more officers. I know that those data points are also important. To know how students are feeling, and mental health is really, really critical. So I would actually take a look at all of the information, but also filter that through conversations with students and relationships. I think it all goes back to having those relationships, understanding what's going on in your school, your classroom, with the people that you ride the bus with. All of those are points where we can start to prevent some of these things. But I think for the most part, really know the students in the classrooms and what's going on with them. There's a lot going on, and I know what it used to feel like being a child. So I do think that that's something that we should take a look at.
Thank you, Ms. Marilyn Clark. Finally, Mr. William Swope.
I believe in a collaborative effort. I think the first step is to get the parents involved. And I think that it is important that we also make sure that we provide mental health in our schools for our students. As a paraeducator at one of the schools, I learned as much in my 3 years there as I learned in over 50 years of life. And our kids need help. I believe that we need to meet them where they are. And we need to show them that there are better ways, there are more opportunities, and we need to prepare them. That's it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Isabella Martos Uniaga. I am currently a junior at Henry Clay High School and have attended Fayette County Public Schools since the 10th grade. Here's our next question. Question 2. Most students in our schools appreciate the diversity and differences that exist among the student body and staff of FCPS. We would like to know, how do you define diversity, and what are your thoughts on providing an equitable education to each student based on our experiences, diversity, and the history of our nation? Starting with Mr. William Swope.
Diversity is such a crucial issue. And oftentimes, diversity leads to what I would call a clear understanding of the issues. And beyond that, if you don't have diversity, oftentimes those individuals are left out of the conversation. And if you don't have a seat at the table, your voice isn't being heard. So I believe in inclusion and diversity. I think that it makes for a well-rounded conversation and understanding of thoughts, ideas, and where our students may be.
Next, we have Miss Marilyn Clark.
Okay. Diversity exists. If we look around this room, we see a lot of diverse people. We all come from different backgrounds. Inclusion and equity is what I think we need to work towards. Inclusion is really having a seat at that table, people having a voice. But equity is really about giving each student what they need to be successful. So I have 2 children, and what one child needed versus what the other child needed was almost like night and day, and they're in the same household. So you can imagine teaching a class, you have to think about equity. So equity in terms of where a student is with what they're learning, where they are mentally, where they are physically. So there's a lot that goes into equity, and I think that's what we strive for. I know here we have diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so the data and the research around belonging is really, really critical, because when someone doesn't feel like they fit in or they don't belong, then a lot of the other work that you want to do with that student or with that person it gets shut down. So it's like little kids on the playground. We always want to belong. We want somebody that's going to reach out to us. We should all have somebody in the school district that we can say has our back, is our person that we go to. And so I really work a lot on diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. I totally believe that it is crucially important to the district to really take a look at how each student is doing, regardless of their backgrounds.
Finally, we have Mr. Edward Dixon.
Diversity for me goes beyond just looking at what we can see. Both of my kids have really opened my eyes up to that with their friends. My job has really opened my eyes up to that. Designing interfaces for accessibility, so people who might use screen readers can use it. When I look at this stage, my first thought is, where's the ramp for somebody with a wheelchair? And I mean, they might be able to get to it outside of this room, but they have to go outside, whereas we can just walk onto that stage. So diversity to me is take into account everybody's unique traits that make them them. Growing up, something I've always struggled with being biracial is identity. I've never had a biracial teacher. My first black teacher was my second grade teacher, and I never had one since. So it's really important for me to look out and see people that look like me, who have had experiences like me, and at the same time, meet other people who have had other experiences, people who have lived a different life than I've lived, to kind of get that broader worldview. As far as Fayette County schools, I think it's really important to make our school board diverse, obviously, but to make sure that the kids see themselves in the people that are teaching them, that they see themselves in the staff members. That's kind of like a sticking point with me, and my job is I want to make sure that the students that attend University of Kentucky see themselves in in the investigators, the researchers that I work with.
Hi, I am Seven Burnham. I am a freshman at Brown Station High School and have attended Fayette County Public Schools since preschool. I have your next question. Third question. Since the pandemic, the Kentucky General Assembly now allows schools to have non-traditional instruction days, also known as NTI. Basically, this virtual learning where teachers put assignments online and students log in to complete these assignments. There is a limit teacher-student interaction during this process. Are you in favor of FCPS utilizing NTI days on snow days or days where these are lots of absence due to illnesses? Why or why not? Starting with Mr. Wilson Swope.
I would think that that would be left to the superintendent. I do not believe that as parents, we have a role in that decision-making process. Too often, issues such as the pandemic get politicized and we get bogged down in issues that are not really germane to the main issue. I would always err on the side of safety, personally speaking. I believe that some matters are individual choices, and that it is important that we allow students and parents to be the ultimate decision maker. So in terms of whether those are non-traditional learning days or days that are spent in the classroom, I think ought to be left to the professionals and not necessarily those of us that at some point in time will be elected officials.
Next up, we have Ms. Marlene Clark.
Okay. I want to make sure I have this correct. So you're asking if we should have NTI days when there's large number of students out sick or snow days, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I think when we have large numbers of students absent, that may be something that really we have to make a collaborative decision about. I know when you're not feeling well, you're not really going to want to participate in classes and in learning. The snow days, I know we've had a number of snow days and a lot of inclement weather. I think those are judgment calls. And I do think that, I remember one year my kids were in school, we actually missed almost 2 weeks of school. And there was no Zoom, and there was none of those things, and it was difficult getting caught up. I remember being sick as a child and missing a couple of weeks out of school, and it's very difficult getting caught up. So I do think that with sicknesses and those kinds of absences, it's very difficult. For snow days, I think you're going to get decisions not only from the district, but also from the state level. So I think those are going to vary.
Finally up, we have Mr. Edward Dixon.
For me, that's a tough question. I know during COVID, I have 2 kids. My daughter at the time was in middle school, flourished with online learning, like absolutely rocked it. My son struggled, complete opposite end of the spectrum. My office at the time I worked remotely was opposite on the other side of the wall of his room, and I could hear him crying when he was doing assignments. I heard him get left out of group assignments because his teacher skipped over him. And when we talk about NTI days, my mind immediately goes to the students who don't have access to internet or who don't have parents that can stay at home with them to make sure that they're doing their assignments. That was something, I mean, I couldn't say for sure, but I know that when my son attended online learning, I guarantee there were kids who were, at home by themselves, and at the time he was in first, second grade, and that's tough. So that's one of those decisions that we would really have to evaluate all of the tools at our disposal, all the resources we have, and then make the decision from there. I'm not opposed to just saying, hey, let's not use the NTI days because we have so many kids that are sick, because at the end of the day, safety comes first. I know when I coach soccer, if my kids aren't safe, nothing else matters. So that's how I would respond.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Our next question is, we all have heard adults complaining about paying taxes. And of course, everyone wants to pay as little taxes as possible. We also know that teachers are very underpaid, and their pay is not keeping up with the inflation. In FCPS, about 75% of the budget is salaries, and the other 25% include instructional supplies, utilities, general maintenance, and the basic operations of the district. Since creating a budget is one of the primary responsibilities of the school board, where do you think there is opportunity for the district to be more efficient in an effort to increase salaries and put more dollars directly into the classroom? Starting with Mr. William Swope.
Well, to be honest with you, I would think that, first of all, let me say that in my previous experience, I was responsible for a division budget at the state level. Without having that information in front of me, it would be very difficult to determine where the cuts should be made and where more resources should be allocated. But I do think that as a school board, we are provided with information where we would make very, very tough decisions. Could you repeat the second part of your question, please?
Of course. Since creating a budget is one of the primary responsibilities of the school board, where do you think there is opportunity for the district to be more efficient in an effort to increase salaries and put more dollars directly into the classroom?
Well, as a school board member, I support our teachers. I think that it is important that we provide them with the tools and the resources that they need to make sure that our students achieve at a high level. Again, I would say that without having a budget in front of me and looking at where the money is allocated, it would be very difficult to make a determination what needs to be cut, what should be cut, and where the resources should be going.
Thank you, Mr. Swope. Next, we have Mr. Edward Dixon.
So I agree with Mr. Swope in that it would be really difficult to make those decisions without looking at the budget. But one point I want to touch on is the beginning of that question where, we hear that people don't want to pay taxes, and people think that, FCPS is just pocketing the money. And when I say people, I mean a very small vocal majority in Fayette County. And I respond to these people almost every other day. And I think there's a huge opportunity for Fayette County Board of Education to do a better job at communicating what's happening at the district level, communicating the decisions that are being made. I know as a parent, I get the emails from the board after every board meeting. But for somebody who doesn't have kids but still have to pay school taxes, somebody whose kids are older and maybe they're not as involved in Fayette County schools anymore, those are the people that we really need to work harder on reaching out to and demonstrating what is happening and how their money is being spent. As far as salaries, I totally agree that we need to improve salaries across the board. I mean, to me, teachers and nurses and doctors are the foundation of any community. Without them, you fall apart. I also believe that a lot of issues we have in our society today as a country are rooted in education. I feel we can do a much better job there. That's my response.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And finally, Ms. Marilyn Clark.
Okay. I would take a look at the budget, and again, not having reviewed it in detail, and look for anything on the operational side of the house. So we have academics, we have operational things, and that's where I generally look to see if there's any way that we can decrease any spending there. But one of the things that happens with the school district is it's expanding. And I think the general public, wants us to keep the same amount of staff, and that's just not always possible. As we bring on new schools, and when I worked for the district, we built 5 schools. That's a lot of new people. And so I do think that's one place where maybe an outside consultant could come in, take a look and see, are there any resources that we can find in one area to add to some other place, or just to know exactly what's going on with finances. But I do believe that as we expand the district and we bring on more people, we also have to think about staffing for those people as well. I, like my counterparts here, believe that teachers are the backbone of what we do here, and they deserve to make better salaries. And so I'm looking forward to the information that'll come back about the raises and what we're trying to do here.
Here is the last question for this evening's forum. From the very first waves of school closures and lockdowns around our nation in 2020, the pandemic significantly impacted students' mental health. Also, the grief, anxiety, and depression children have experienced during the pandemic is welling over into classrooms and hallways, resulting in crying and disruptive behavior in many younger kids and increased violence and bullying among adolescents. This is in addition to many students falling behind academically during this time. As a school board member, what steps would you take to help FCPS deal with these issues? Starting with Ms. Marilyn Clark.
Well, I want to say that the district has taken steps towards mental health. I do know that we have brought on more counselors, we've got nurses, we've got resource centers, and I would propose that we continue to expand that. I don't know at what levels and where we are in terms of is that in every school or not, but I will continue to expand that. I know that the University of Kentucky, we've had to deal with a lot of issues around mental health for students. We have a Student Success Center. And so when students do have problems, they have a place where they can go that is not a problem for them to be there and receive some additional help. We have looked at different things like mental health apps, peer-to-peer conversations with one another where students are trained. So I think there's a lot of different things and models that we could look at around the country in terms of how we are dealing with mental health. But it's very difficult, and I've seen it in students, I've seen it in my family, and it's very difficult to deal with trying to get a good education if your mental health is not all there. So I think it is a crucial thing, not only in public schools, but also in universities and in adults. And I think it's finally at a point where we are talking about it openly as a community, and that never was the case before. So I think in that way, the pandemic did bring mental health to light. And so I think it's something we should continue to look at and provide services.
Next, Mr. Edward Dixon.
So, in my experience with my son, who absolutely struggled during COVID, my wife and I are really, we're still seeing the effects of it. He's had behavior issues this school year, but we are very, very grateful. And I'm totally going to give a shout out to the Wellington Elementary mental health staff. The counselors have been patient. They've been phenomenal. We've seen a huge change in him. So the resources that have already been allocated to schools, I think, are a great first step. I feel like we need to continue to reevaluate and take additional steps, especially at the high school level. And also do a good job of communicating what resources are available to students, to them. It's one thing to make all these resources available, but if you're not actively pushing those out there saying, hey, this is what we have for you, this is who you can talk to, these are the apps that you can use, or the number to call, or the tip line to send things to, then that kind of gets lost. It's kind of like benefits at UK. UK has phenomenal benefits, but if you don't know about them, are they really useful? So as far as mental health, that's kind of how I would approach that is doing a better job at communicating what's currently available to students and making sure that teachers are also aware of what's available.
Finally, Mr. William Swope.
Thank you for the question. I think that the school system shares an issue with law enforcement. We expect our school systems to be the be-all, catch-all for any and all issues that arise, much like we do with law enforcement. I believe that through training of our teachers, more resource officers, we will be able to address mental health issues. I've learned through my experience that if teachers, or when teachers, I should say, take the time and the energy and let the students know that they have a supporter, they have someone in the corner, that lines of communication just open up. As I said before, I learned so much in the classroom just from kids, from students. I learned as much from them as I did my 31 years as a public safety officer. So I would like to see us, I would like to see the community involved and dedicate itself to the issue of mental health. I think it gets overlooked sometimes. See, my time is up, so.
That concludes our questions of our forum for this evening. I would like to thank our candidates for being here and taking the time to answer our questions. I would also like to thank our current school board members for the opportunity to have this forum. Finally, a special thank you to all of those in the audience this evening and those watching online. Good night, everyone.